What's up again, everybody? Well, another skirmish season is in the books, and with it come two heroes riding off into the sunset. Very, very likely. So take a look right here. Oldhim and Iyslander, both firmly positioned to rotate out in this last week of skirmish season with 494 points respectively for Oldhim and 488 for Iyslander. That equates to, if you look at the point totals up here, for a skirmish win, you get 2 points. Literally, Oldhim needed to win 3 events, and Iyslander needed to win 6 events. Out of all the events in the world, they only needed 3 and 6 respectively. So, with these two heroes riding off into the sunset and no longer being legal for the Blitz format, what does that do to the meta that we've grown and learned and been in for almost over a year in a lot of cases? That's what we're going to talk about today. Today I'm going to give you 5 heroes that are going to supplant these two as they ride off. I'm going to give you 5 heroes that are going to be strong in the meta going forward, and one of them in particular I think is going to become the new big bad, if you will, of the meta. So first things first, I want to start by giving a huge honorable mention to Prism. Prism, in my opinion, is a nice little hero that has been putting up some numbers this most recent skirmish season. People are starting to embrace Luminaris, Spectra, and auras, and you can also just run like big heralds. The problem with Prism, I think, right now is that she has some very tough matchups as well as some slam dunk matchups. So she is very polarizing in that respect, but I want to shout her out because I do think she deserves the credit that she has been starting to get in a lot of ways. And if she keeps going in this way, and perhaps with Dusk till Dawn giving more, I don't know, maybe light or shadow cards, if we see that, Prism could definitely be on the rise. So keep an eye out and a lookout for Prism, and start to plan ahead if you're building your Blitz decks with how you're going to deal with Spectra and auras. But now we come to the 5 that are sticking out, in my opinion, for candidates that are going to rise to the top of this meta, and the first one, in my opinion, is Lexi. Lexi is an interesting case because she was provided a couple of great arrows and all the codices in this most recent set, just like Azalea was. But Lexi is already sort of this pseudo super go wide tempo-oriented deck where she just wants to push out massive amounts of damage, almost like a Fi in Classic Constructed. She just wants to go super wide, but she was really pushed down via the blocking capability to some respect of Oldhim, but really the Iyslander's disruptive effects of having to chase arcane damage and disruption and being taxed heavily. She struggled with that in that meta. And then you looked at some other matchups, and some of them were also not great and kind of hard to deal with, and you have a bow, and so you're being held back. But with the new cards that she's gained, and with basically the see you later bye aspect of the two heroes we mentioned prior of Oldhim and Iyslander, Lexi is poised to be a very potent, on-hit, very scary aggro deck in the format. So if you're into firing arrows, she might just be the pickup for you because she's got some great tools at her disposal now. And you can build the deck, just super go wide, good arrows, or you could build the deck with a little bit of ice and disruption. She's got options for her as well. So this is probably her time to start rising to the top and showing people what she can do in the Blitz format. Now, a hero that's already done that and is continuing to do that is one of my favorites in the format, and that's Kasai, Centauri Sellsword. Here's the wonderful thing about Kasai. Kasai has been given consistent tools that she can easily take advantage of, and you put those tools alongside of a huge equipment suite in a format where your opponent and you start at a lower life total. You have so much advantage from having huge equipment blocks, and you can push a lot of damage and play in a combo-oriented way. There's a lot going for Kasai, and you take away Iyslander, who was, a fair matchup, but kind of unfavored. Let's put it that way. A little bit unfavored, at least the way I played the matchup into Kasai. Was a bit unfavored in a lot of respects and could be taxed and could be stopped in some respects, but also just, your equipment doesn't have as much effect if they're throwing arcane damage at you, so you lose a little bit of that edge. You take that away, And Kasai just has the ability to push a ton more damage across the board. There are still tough matchups that you have to face into. And there's also a hero that's actually trying to push a very similar go wide, but also hide behind armor strategy, if you will, that gives Kasai a run for her money. But Kasai is really not going anywhere anytime soon because she's good, and when two good heroes rotate out, she's just gonna get a little bit better. So too is Dash. Dash is in the same boat. She is gaining the ability to just push damage into a variety of new decks. And honestly, it's interesting. These two heroes, in my opinion, aren't changing around much. They already had some game into both heroes. I feel like Dash perhaps feels a little bit better without Oldhim being around. And I don't necessarily feel that Icelander versus Dash was like a really one way or the other, because I do think Dash just was able to push so much damage, oftentimes past, you know, like a few taxes here and there, that she could get there at times. And so Dash isn't really losing bad matchups as much as she's gaining from the loss of two great heroes in general. And she is consistent at pushing massive amounts of damage, just being a good solid aggro hero that she can go kind of toe-to-toe with the rest of the meta, as it were, and go toe-to-toe with, I feel like, the decks that we've talked about up until this point. I think she can possibly struggle into you know, like Aura Prism, for example, if Aura Prism can kind of get the board rolling. But then again, there's a lot of heroes that struggle against Aura Prism if they get the ball rolling. So then we come to my favorite hero of them all. Kano is such a fun deck. Here's the thing. I don't main any hero in Classic Constructed, but I feel as though the closest I get to this maining a hero is Kano in Blitz, because Kano in Blitz is my favorite deck to play. I love playing this deck so much. And yet, I had to put him on the list because I still think he's going to be one of the top heroes in the meta. And I feel like this is his format. It's always going to be his format until he has to say goodbye. But Kano is one of those heroes that just, this format is perfect for him. And he's able to kind of dance around the life totals. And sometimes he has bad matchups, like into Prism, for example, because 15 life is rough, and into a few other heroes. And that's what pulls him back right now, perhaps. But he's always going to have some utility in the format. He's always going to have one of those, just like, you better prepare for him and you better know how to play against Kano, because if you don't, you are going to die. It doesn't matter really who you are. The problem is that there are a few great decks that make it hard to play as Kano. And, you know, one of those I still think is Dash. Dash is still a little bit of a tough matchup for Kano because Dash can just kill you in like 2 turns as a 15 health hero. And there's one other hero that I may be talking about next that also just does the exact same thing as Dash against Kano. But Kano still has game into a variety of heroes in the field. And again, he's so powerful, even with the exclusion of all the cards they've taken away from him, he still has legs in the format. Now, I do think that the cards taken away from him are the right cards at this point. They are good, and he doesn't need to be nerfed. He doesn't need to be nerfed anymore. Okay, look, don't do it. Don't do it. He does not need to be pulled back anymore, and trust me, he does have some bad matchups, including what I believe to be the boogeyman of the format now that Icelander and Oldhim ride off into the Living Legend pool. And that's Chain. Chain was already starting to ramp up in both popularity and in playability. Like, we saw a lot more people start picking up Chain and start playing Chain. It's interesting. Chain was very much looked down upon in Blitz about a year ago. People, both Prism and Chain, were actually just looking at both of them saying, why would you ever play these heroes in Blitz? It doesn't make any sense. You know, like they clearly don't have the, you know, the stuff to go up against, you know, like Ira or Oldhim or, you know, all these other heroes that perhaps they're correct on. I don't know. Perhaps they were correct on at the time, but we as a community kind of looked past them. And yet here they are, basically unchanged in form. And Chain, for example, incredibly powerful and poses some very hugely dangerous risks to anyone that wants to go toe-to-toe on an aggro front. he takes a couple of turns to really start snowballing, but if you give him like a turn, or 2 turns, the game is almost over. And the cool thing for him is that he has use of the biggest blocking equipment in the game in Carrion Husk. He can just literally toss a husk at your most dangerous attack in the first 2 turns of the game, build up some, Soul Shackle tokens, and then start banishing the top of his deck, grabbing some hits, and at some point, your hand turns into resources, and your opponent turns into mush because you've murdered them twice over. And Chain is really starting to show, I think in the Blitz format in general, even before these 2 heroes rotate, that he has a huge place. And now that they're gone, I feel like the doors that were holding Chain back were iced shut by Icelander in a lot of respects. Icelander saying goodbye, and to some degree, I guess you could technically build like Oldhim to kind of pseudo-fatigue Chain, right? But with both of those heroes going, the doors are going to be just a little cracked open, and Chain's going to kick him in, and then he's going to kick everyone's teeth in, and then we're all going to question whether or not we can stop Chain, because I do believe that he is perhaps the most powerful hero in Blitz now. So I want to hear your thoughts on Chain below. Let me know if I'm completely off base. Am I missing a hero? Is there another hero that should be on this list? Or did I value Prism too low? Do you think Prism is actually one of the top 5 heroes in this upcoming new Blitz meta? Blitz is, by all intents and purposes, the most popular worldwide format of the game of Flesh and Blood. So sound off in a comment below if you are in another part of the country. Let me know where you're from. If you're in another part of the world, let me know where you're at and how Blitz is taken there and what you think is going to happen in this next Blitz season, if you will. And if you want to see more stuff here, make a number. Go slightly higher. I'm going to be making more videos here this week, and then I'm going to be hopping on a plane and going to Pro Tour Baltimore. So, hey, if you're going to be at Pro Tour Baltimore, let me know. Maybe we can get together. I'm bringing like a full thing, a retinue of UPF decks. So if you want to play UPF with me, or if you want to play Blitz Kano, well, I have Blitz Kano. You can play whatever you want. As always, thanks for watching.